how would you explain what it is that you do with families?
The main method I apply is the family constellation. That means that a client who presents me with a problem picks from a group representatives for various members of his family.
So can I just check this out with you? So someone picks out strangers out of an audience,
Yes,
to play his or her mother, father, brother, sister, that kind of thing?
Well, he doesn't play them, he represents them.
I see.
And as soon as they are set up.
Set up means put in place physically?
Yes, so that we see the relationship between them, then the representatives feel like the persons they represent without knowing them. It's a kind of participating in something greater where there is knowledge present, like a knowing field which encompasses all the participants and the family members.
So I think that's also why you speak of your system as a systemic family therapy. Is that the knowing field that you're referring to right now?
Yes, and this field or the family reacts in a particular way. We can observe that in a family in the wider sense, that means not only the parents and the children, but also the grandparents and the brothers and sisters of the parents, that they are steered by a common conscience, which is completely unconscious. Now this common conscience sees to it that no member of the family is lost. So if in one generation a person, a member of the family is excluded for whatever reason, or if it is forgotten, like stillborn children very often, this member of the family will then be represented in a later generation by somebody who has no idea about them, and in this way their life and their fate and their destiny are repeated. And this is very strange. That means that the member picked up by that common conscience has to live a life foreign to his own destiny.
One of the components of this knowing field that you talk about would be that it has a memory, and that even though we may forget, that the greater intelligence does not forget and wants to be sure that things are not forgotten.
Exactly.
Okay.
But while this is honoring the former member, it is disregarding the later member.
Mm-hmm.
So this common conscience is not just. And the later member who has to represent a former member of the family feels not to be in contact with his own destiny. He has to repeat a destiny foreign to him.
So in a practical sense, if there was someone in the family, a grandparent, who was very hateful and spiteful and even maybe committed criminal acts, then the family will want to forget about that person, not talk about her or him, and then somehow a child or grandchild will be hateful and will have criminal tendencies, even though if they were left alone, they would never go that way.
Exactly, exactly. Now by the family constellation, this connection comes to light. For instance, if that excluded person is represented in the family.
So if that person is put up and looked at and seen.
Yes, then you can see that the member identified with that former person feels good as soon as this other person is also included.
But in the usual way that we're used to working through our rage and anger and difficulties with our parents and grandparents, how is your point of view different?
You see, the psychodynamic approach is valid in many respects, but very often you reach a boundary which you can't transgress. You can't go beyond that, a limit which you can't go beyond. So you have to widen the scope, and then you include the family dynamics, and very often then you find a solution for the problems you couldn't solve before.
Now, where would your method be most effective, and where would it be least effective? Where would, in its application?
It is most effective, and it's actually necessary wherever you have to do with an entanglement.
So, Bert, in terms of your own personal life, how has this understanding influenced the way you live your life every day?
Well, I don't distinguish anymore between good and evil. And I see the bad person and the good person, both in the service of greater forces. So I don't interfere in a way where I get angry with somebody. I see this and I accept it as part of human life, that you are exposed to what we call good or evil influences, and both contribute to the personal growth.
So if I wanted to check in with me, or if you were to teach me how to be connected with my soul, as in that same way that you talk about, what guidelines would you give me?
Well, first of all, I would explain something about conscience. Many people think they are in tune with the real forces when they follow their conscience. But I have observed that conscience is something very particular and very limited, and it serves basically only the connecting, that we are connected to our own family. I will give another example, make it more easy. Now, if a man marries a woman, they both come from two different families. Now, both of them think that the values of their own family are the right ones. Now, if they would acknowledge that the other family is of equal value, they will have a bad conscience. But if they persist thinking that their own family is the right one and the other one is not so good, then they will be fighting between the couple all the time. So both of them have to give up something of this, of their own old conscience, and agree on something new on a higher level. If you set up two persons, let's say a person who has backache, and you set up the person and the mother, and you don't interfere, you just let them stand there, very soon a movement will start in both of them which shows the real dynamics. And at the end, this movement will bring the two together in a way which you could not imagine before. So there is a movement starting which has a reconciling effect. Perhaps I give an example which may explain that more graphically. In a constellation in Israel, a woman, when I was working there in a group, a woman said that her father was murdered by an Arab. And I set up two persons, a representative for her father and a representative for the Arab who murdered him. And they didn't intervene. They just stood opposite one another. And then a movement started where the Arab first withdrew, that he drew closer to the man he murdered. They looked in their eyes, and a very deep love showed between them. And at the end, they both were lying on the floor side by side in peace. Now this is a movement of the soul. When I asked the representative of the island afterwards, he said, first he felt full of hate, and then he looked at the eyes of his victim, then he could see him as a person, and then he felt a very deep love for him, and all the hatred was gone. Now, this shows what can happen, not only between two people, but between two different groups who were antagonistic to one another before.
I know in the family constellations when you work that you often check with members who don't feel right, that you keep going back to those people who somehow don't feel right in their place or in their position. Does that mean that they are carrying something from the family, or?
Yes. And then I look for their place, or get in other members of the family until they feel right. See? At the end, all members of the family constellation feel at the right place and they feel good. And that shows the resolution has been found.
And along those lines, also your work, you talk about orders of love, that what you aim for is for love to flow again in a family. Are there any general kind of interventions that you do frequently that achieve that aim? Is there something specific that you know how to make go in that direction?
Well, first of all, what I found out, and what everybody can, of course, confirm is that love alone does not succeed. You see couples, you see, who really love one another and they're in for trouble. Or parents love their children dearly and they don't develop the way they want to.
So love is not enough, love alone?
Love is not enough. Love can only succeed if it follows certain orders. And by the family constellation, these orders come to light. Now, one of the orders is that all have equal dignity. So
regardless of age or station or gender?
Let's say a man was married before. Then he separated from the wife, and the wife is angry with him, whatever the circumstances were. Now he marries again, see? Now the first wife very often is excluded. The man justifies the separation by speaking in a bad way about his first wife. And the second wife justifies her marriage with the man by speaking badly of the first wife. Now she is not acknowledged. Now the result is that once they have children, one of the children represents the first wife and has the same feelings as the first wife. And she, because she represents the first wife, she becomes a rival to her mother. She can't be a child. And she becomes secretly a partner to her father, and she can't be a child either. So the order of love would be that the husband says to his first wife, "You were my great first love. And thank you for everything you gave to me. I honor this. And you may keep what I gave to you. And please look now friendly on my second wife and on my children." And if the first wife is acknowledged this way, she looks friendly. Then the child no longer has to represent the first wife.
Because something is excluded that
has been included again. This is an order of love, for instance. And they lose something by this, personally.
So you're saying the respect and the honor is important of that.
It's very important.
So for the orders of love to be established, for love to flow, you're saying one thing that is important is inclusion, all this, what we have been talking about. What are some other things that are important that you look for?
Well, among the orders of love, it's very important that those who came first take first place.
So the older ones,
The older ones.
came
The
first by
parents-
years.
The parents are more important than the children.
More important in what way?
They must tell their children, we come first. If we want something, that comes first. And what you want comes second. And then the child feels safe if that is done. If the children become more important than the parents, something is disturbed. For instance, very often if a couple has difficulties, I ask them, what's more important to you, your relationship or you being a parent? Very often, once they have children, being a parent becomes more important than their personal relationship. And then that is a disturbance. If they now return to having to look at their relationship as the basis of everything else, then children feel happy. They are much better parents than if they just concentrate on the children. That would be also an order of life.